I'm Kristen, and until recently, I thought I had it all figured out. Tom and I had been married for 2 years, living in a beautiful apartment in a nice neighborhood. We both had good jobs. I worked at an advertising agency, and Tom headed sales at a sports nutrition company. Our plan was simple: save for a house, then start a family. We lived frugally, sharing one car. Every morning, Tom dropped me off at work before heading to his office. I'd make my own way home in the evenings. It wasn't always convenient, but we were determined. Then Tom's sister, Sarah, came to visit with her 2 kids. She was a single mom. Her husband had died in a car accident. Tom's parents, my in-laws, were super protective of her. They were always trying to make sure she didn't feel lonely, which is why they sent her to stay with us. When Sarah arrived, Tom was over the moon. "Isn't it great to have them here?" he said, helping with her bags. I nodded, trying to match his excitement. "Sure, it'll be nice to spend time together." At first, I thought Tom's attention to Sarah and her kids was sweet. He played with the children, listened to Sarah's problems, and bent over backward to make them comfortable. As the days passed, Tom's focus on Sarah intensified. He started demanding that I put her needs first, too. "Kristen, can you help Sarah with the kids' laundry?" Or, "Why don't you take Sarah shopping? She needs to relax." I was exhausted from work and now had to cater to Sarah's every whim. The breaking point came when Tom said, "Kristen, Sarah's going through a tough time. We need to make her stay as comfortable as possible. Can't you be more understanding?" I stared at him, disbelief washing over me. "Tom, I'm trying, but I'm tired too. I work all day, then come home to cook and clean for everyone. I need a break too." He frowned, clearly unhappy with my response. "Sarah's a single mom. She needs our support. You should be more sympathetic." As I watched Tom fuss over Sarah and her kids, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. This wasn't just a visit anymore. Something had shifted, and I wasn't sure I was going to like where it was heading. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah showed no signs of leaving. I was exhausted, both mentally and physically. After long days at the ad agency, I'd come home to cook for everyone and clean up the mess. Tom's constant criticism was wearing me down. "Kristen, Sarah doesn't like spicy food. Can't you make something else?" Tom complained one evening. I bit my tongue, fighting back tears of frustration. "Tom, I'm doing my best. I'm tired too, you know. Sarah's with the kids all day. She's exhausted and has no time to cook," he shot back. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. "I understand that, but—" "No buts, Kristen. We need to support her." I nodded silently, not wanting to start another argument. I got it. I really did. Sarah was going through a tough time, both mentally and physically. But I was tired of Tom's unfair reproaches. I couldn't wait for things to go back to normal. One evening, as I was scrubbing dishes after dinner, Tom dropped a bombshell. "Kristen, we need to talk," he said, leaning against the counter. I dried my hands, bracing myself. "What's up?" "Sarah's thinking of looking for a job here in the city," he said, a hint of excitement in his voice. I froze. "Oh? That's unexpected." "Yeah, isn't it great? But here's the thing," he continued, not noticing my discomfort. "I think you should quit your job and take care of the kids in the house." The dish I was holding slipped from my hands, clattering in the sink. "What? You can't be serious." Tom frowned. "Of course I am. Sarah needs to work, and someone needs to watch the kids." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Tom, I'm not quitting my job to take care of someone else's children. That's not fair." "Fair? What's not fair is expecting Sarah to manage everything on her own," he snapped. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Okay, let's think about this. Where is Sarah planning to live if she gets a job here?" Before Tom could answer, Sarah walked into the kitchen, a smile on her face. "Oh, didn't Tom tell you? I'll be living here, of course, with my amazing brother. He understands me, supports me. I couldn't ask for a better brother." I stared at Tom, my eyes demanding an explanation. He shifted uncomfortably under my gaze. "Look, Kristen, can we discuss this later?" he said quickly, avoiding eye contact. "No, Tom, we need to talk about this now," I insisted, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm not okay with this arrangement. We can't all live together. It's too cramped in this apartment for 5 people." Tom's face lit up, as if he'd just remembered something wonderful. "But honey, don't you see? This is perfect. We were planning to buy a house anyway. Now we have even more reason to do it sooner. There'll be plenty of space for everyone." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Tom, that's not the point. We can't just—" But he cut me off mid-sentence, his attention already elsewhere. "Sorry, Kristen, we'll talk later. I promised the kids I'd play with them." And just like that, he was gone, leaving me standing in the kitchen, mouth agape, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. From that day on, everything changed. Tom stopped driving me to work, always with the same excuse. "Sorry, babe, I'm really busy this morning." I knew he was lying, but I couldn't prove it. So, I found myself commuting on my own, both morning and evening, adding extra stress to my already hectic days. One afternoon, I came home early from work, hoping to get a head start on dinner. Instead, I walked into chaos. Sarah was sprawled on the couch, eyes glued to some trashy reality show, while her kids ran wild. "Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "what's going on here?" She barely glanced up. "Oh, hi, Kristen. The kids were bored, so I let them play." I looked around in horror. The walls were covered in crayon scribbles. There were mysterious stains on the couch, and my beloved houseplants, the ones I'd nurtured for years, were knocked over, soil spilling across the floor. "This isn't playing, Sarah. This is destroying our home." I couldn't keep the frustration out of my voice. Sarah just shrugged, her eyes already back on the TV. "They're just kids, Kristen. Lighten up." I took a deep breath, counting to 10 in my head. "Sarah, I thought you were looking for a job. Have you had any luck?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, I've sent my resume everywhere, but nothing good has come up yet. They all want too much work for too little pay. I'm not desperate, you know." I bit my tongue, holding back the retort that threatened to spill out. Of course she wasn't desperate. She had a free ride here, with Tom and me footing the bill and doing all the work. That night, as Tom and I got ready for bed, I tried one more time to talk sense into him. "Tom, we need to set some ground rules. Sarah can't just let the kids run wild like that, and she needs to start contributing to the household chores." Tom sighed, looking exasperated. "Kristen, Sarah's going through a tough time. Can't you cut her some slack?" "Slack? Tom, I've been cutting her slack for weeks. Our home is being destroyed. I'm doing all the work, and you're acting like I'm the unreasonable one here." "Keep your voice down," Tom hissed. "You'll wake everyone up. Look, I know it's not ideal, but it's family. We have to stick together." As I lay in bed that night, listening to Tom's soft snores, I couldn't help but wonder, when did I stop being part of this family? And more importantly, how much longer could I keep living like this? As days turned into weeks, the situation at home only worsened. Tom seemed oblivious to the chaos his sister and her kids were creating. Whenever I tried to establish some order or ask the kids to clean up after themselves, Sarah would run to Tom with complaints. "Tom," I overheard her one evening, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I don't think Kristen likes the children. She's always yelling at them, forcing them to clean. They're just kids, you know?" I waited for Tom to defend me, to point out that basic tidiness wasn't child abuse. Instead, I heard him sigh heavily. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'll talk to her." That night, Tom confronted me in our bedroom. "Look at this place, Kristen. It's a mess. If you can't keep it clean with the kids here, maybe—" "Maybe what, Tom?" I challenged, already knowing where this was going. "Maybe you should consider quitting your job. If you were home full-time, you could keep the house in order without putting so much pressure on the kids." I laughed bitterly. "So now it's child labor to ask kids to clean up after themselves?" "Tom, do you hear yourself?" But he wasn't listening. He'd been pushing this agenda for weeks now, and I was exhausted from fighting it. "You know what, Tom? Fine. You want me to quit?" I quit. His eyes widened in surprise. "Really? You mean it?" I nodded, a plan already forming in my mind. "Yep, I'll call work tomorrow and tell them." Tom's face broke into a wide grin. He hugged me tightly, not noticing how stiff I was in his embrace. "Oh, Kristen, this is great. You'll see, everything will be better now." The next day, I did call work, but not to quit. I spoke with my boss and explained that I needed to take a 3-month unpaid leave for family reasons. Thankfully, I'd recently trained an intern who could cover for me. My boss was understanding and approved my request. When I told Tom I'd quit, he beamed with pride, shooting a triumphant look at Sarah. "See? I told you Kristen would come around. She understands the importance of family." As I watched them share their moment of victory, I felt like a stranger in my own home. But I reminded myself that this was temporary. 3 months. I'd given myself 3 months to see how this situation would play out, to see if Tom would realize the mistake he was making. The next morning, as Tom left for work, he kissed me on the cheek. "Have a great day at home, honey. I know you'll do a fantastic job." I forced a smile, waving as he drove away. Then I turned to face the mess that awaited me inside. Sarah was already on the couch, TV remote in hand, while her kids ran around, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. From the day I quit my job, my life transformed into an endless cycle of chores and childcare. I'd wake up at dawn, prepare breakfast for everyone, pack Tom's lunch, and then spend the rest of the day cleaning, cooking, and looking after Sarah's kids. Meanwhile, Sarah lived like she was on a perpetual vacation. Days blurred together in a haze of domestic duties. Sarah would swan out of the house, off to shop or meet friends for coffee, leaving her children in my care without so much as a backward glance. I'd watch her drive away in Tom's car, while I was left stranded at home, juggling housework and childcare. Tom, for his part, seemed oblivious to the imbalance. He'd come home, kiss me on the cheek, and ask, "How was your day, honey?" As if I'd chosen this life, as if I was living my dream instead of his sister's. One evening, as I was serving dinner, a meal I'd spent hours preparing while Sarah napped, Tom made an announcement. "So, Sarah's birthday is coming up next month," he said, grinning. "I've got something special planned." Sarah clapped her hands excitedly. "Ooh, do tell!" Tom shook his head. "It's a surprise, but clear your schedule for the evening of the 15th. On the evening of Sarah's birthday, we all piled into Tom's car and headed to LeBlanc, the most expensive restaurant in town. It was the kind of place Tom and I used to dream about going for our anniversaries, but always decided the money would be better spent on our house fund. Tom's parents were already there when we arrived, cooing over Sarah and barely acknowledging my existence. As we settled into our seats, I couldn't help but feel like an outsider looking in on this family celebration. Throughout the meal, the conversation revolved around Sarah, her struggles, her strength, her dreams. I sat quietly, pushing food around my plate, feeling increasingly invisible. After the main course, Tom stood up, gently tapping his glass for attention. "I'd like to make a toast to my incredible sister, Sarah. You've been through so much, and you handle it all with such grace. I'm in awe of your strength." Sarah beamed, soaking in the praise. Tom continued, "And to celebrate your birthday, I have a special surprise." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. For a split second, my heart leaped. Was this all an elaborate ruse? Was he actually going to surprise me with a gift to thank me for my sacrifices? But then he turned to Sarah and held out the box. "Sarah, you've mentioned how hard it is getting around with the kids. So..." He opened the box, revealing a set of car keys. "Happy birthday, sis! Your very own car, just like you've always wanted." The table erupted in applause and exclamations of delight. Sarah jumped up, hugging Tom tightly. "Oh my God, Tom! I can't believe it. You're the best brother ever." I sat there, frozen in shock. A car. He had bought her a car. My mind flashed back to all the times I had mentioned needing a second car, all the times Tom had said we couldn't afford it, that we needed to save for our house. "Tom," I said, trying to keep my tone even, "can I ask why you bought such an expensive gift for Sarah?" The table fell silent, all eyes turning to us. Tom's smile faltered slightly. "Well, Sarah needs a car. She has 2 kids, and it's hard for her to get them to the park or the doctor. Plus, she'll need it when she starts working soon." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "And what about me? I've been asking for a second car for months." Tom's expression hardened. "You're at home all day, Kristen. You don't need a car." The injustice of it all hit me like a physical blow. "How much did this car cost, Tom?" He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. $20,000. The room started to spin. $20,000? Where did you get that kind of money? Tom cleared his throat. "I took it from our joint account, but don't worry, I'll put it back as soon as I get my bonus at work." Something inside me snapped. "You took our savings without even discussing it with me? That was our house fund, Tom. I want you to return that money right now." "Kristen," Tom's mother gasped, "how can you be so selfish? Your sister-in-law needs this car." But I was beyond caring about their opinions. Years of frustration poured out of me. Selfish? I've given up everything for this family. My job, my dreams, my identity. Tom's face was red with anger. "If you're going to be so greedy and inflexible, fine. I'll take out a loan and put the money back in our account. Happy now?" "No!" I shouted, beyond caring about the scene we were causing. "I don't want you taking out a loan. I want you to sell the car and put our savings back where they belong." Sarah, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "See, Tom? I told you she was controlling. She's trying to make you henpecked." Tom's parents nodded in agreement. "Kristen," his father said sternly, "you need to learn your place. Tom is the head of the household." I felt like I was drowning, surrounded by people who didn't see me as a person, just an accessory to their perfect family narrative. Tom stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "That's enough, Kristen. You've ruined everyone's evening with your behavior. Don't you know how to act in public?" Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I stood up, grabbing my purse. "I'm leaving." "Good!" Tom shouted, no longer caring about the other restaurant patrons staring at us. "Get out!" "You ungrateful freeloader. I'm the one who earns the money in this family, and you should be obeying me. Maybe if you got a job, you'd have a right to an opinion." His words hit me like physical blows. I wanted to scream that I hadn't actually quit my job, that I was on leave, but the words stuck in my throat. What was the point? They'd already made up their minds about who I was. As I walked out of the restaurant, I could hear Tom continuing his tirade. "She lives off my hard work and then has the audacity to question my decisions. Can you believe it?" The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, tears finally spilling over. I had never felt so humiliated, so angry, so done. I arrived at our apartment, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. The nanny looked up in surprise as I burst in, tear-stained and disheveled. I went to our bedroom and pulled out my suitcase. With mechanical movements, I began packing my clothes, toiletries, and a few precious mementos. I left a note for Tom, brief and to the point. "I'm staying at a hotel. Don't try to contact me." The hotel room was small and impersonal, but it felt like a sanctuary. For the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling the weight of expectations and disappointment crushing me. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying the evening's events in my mind. By morning, I knew what I had to do. As soon as the law offices opened, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney. Sarah Garcia came highly recommended, known for her fair but firm approach. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, shaking my hand, "tell me what brings you here today." I poured out my story, the gradual erosion of my marriage, the financial betrayal, the public humiliation. Sarah listened attentively, taking notes. Based on what you've told me, she said when I finished, you have a strong case for divorce. Your husband's actions with the joint account are particularly concerning. Let's draft the initial paperwork. Over the next few days, I threw myself into creating a new life. I found a small apartment, not far from my office. I called my boss and explained the situation, asking to end my leave early. She was understanding and welcomed me back with open arms. As I settled into my new routine, I hoped for an amicable divorce. I wasn't out for revenge, I just wanted what was fair. I suggested mediation to Tom, thinking it would be the quickest and least painful way to end things. I'm not asking for much, I told him during our first session. Just return the money you spent on Sarah's car, and we'll split the remaining joint account 50-50. Tom scoffed. Return the money? That car was a gift to my sister. You're being ridiculous. The mediator tried to intervene, but it was clear Tom wasn't budging. After 3 fruitless sessions, I realized we'd have to go to court. The next few months were a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and court appearances. Tom fought me every step of the way, painting me as a gold digger trying to rob his poor sister of her much-needed vehicle. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge made her ruling. The court finds that Mr. Johnson's use of joint funds to purchase a vehicle for his sister, without the consent of his spouse, was illegal. Mr. Johnson is ordered to reimburse Mrs. Johnson for half the value of the vehicle, as well as legal fees. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It wasn't about the money. It was about justice, about having my voice heard and my rights recognized. Tom's face was a mask of fury as we left the courthouse. I hope you're happy, he spat. You've gotten your pound of flesh, you greedy, petty woman. Over the next few weeks, Tom complied with the court order, transferring the money to my account. I later learned he'd had to take out a loan to cover it, but I couldn't bring myself to feel guilty. He'd made his choices, and now we both had to live with the consequences. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I had settled into a comfortable routine. My small apartment had become a haven, filled with peace and the simple joys I'd forgotten during my tumultuous marriage. I'd rekindled old friendships, thrown myself into my work, and even started a small herb garden on my balcony. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I heard an unexpected knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I approached cautiously and peered through the peephole. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Tom standing there, looking disheveled and anxious. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the door. "Kristen," Tom said, his voice hoarse. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, then nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He looked around my apartment, taking in the cozy, organized space. "You look good," he said softly. "The place looks nice." "Thanks," I replied, my guard up. "What brings you here, Tom?" He sank onto my couch, running his hands through his hair. I messed up, Kristen. I see that now. I came to apologize and, well, to ask for your help." I sat in the armchair across from him, waiting silently for him to continue. "I lost my job," he blurted out. "The company downsized, and I was let go. I'm still paying off the loan for Sarah's car, and I'm barely making ends meet. Sarah, she refuses to sell the car or get a job. Says she's not ready yet." A part of me felt a twinge of satisfaction at hearing this, but I pushed it aside. "I'm sorry to hear that, Tom, but I'm not sure how I can help." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "The apartment is a disaster. Sarah doesn't clean, and the kids are out of control. The landlord's threatening to evict us because of the noise and mess. I realize now that you were right about everything. Sarah's not just going through a rough patch, she's taking advantage. And I let her." I sat there, taking in his words. The vindication I felt was bittersweet. Yes, I had been right. But at what cost? "Kristen," Tom continued, his voice breaking, "I know I don't deserve it, but I was hoping maybe we could start over." I've learned my lesson. I miss you, miss us. Maybe with your help, we could fix things. For a moment, I was transported back to the early days of our marriage. The love, the dreams we shared, the future we'd planned together. But then I remembered the betrayal, the humiliation, the months of feeling invisible and unvalued. I took a deep breath. Tom, I appreciate your apology, and I'm sorry you're going through a tough time. But I can't go back. His face fell. But Kristen, I've changed. I see things clearly now. I shook my head gently. The thing is, Tom, I've changed too. These past few months have shown me what I'm capable of, what I deserve. If you betrayed me once, who's to say you wouldn't do it again when things get tough? I wouldn't, he insisted. I've learned my lesson. Maybe you have, I conceded, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm happier now. I've found freedom in being on my own, in making my own choices without having to consider a partner who doesn't value my input. Tom's shoulders slumped. So that's it? There's no chance for us? I stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. I think it's best if you go, Tom. I truly hope things get better for you, but I'm not the solution to your problems. You need to stand on your own 2 feet and make your own choices. He nodded slowly, getting to his feet. At the door, he turned to me one last time. I really am sorry, Kristen, for everything. I know, I said softly. Goodbye, Tom. As I closed the door behind him, I leaned against it, letting out a long breath. A mix of emotions swirled within me. Sadness for the dreams we'd once shared, a touch of schadenfreude at Tom's comeuppance, but most of all, an overwhelming sense of relief and freedom.